Jonathan, we must go back to day 1, where it began with the tank, some rock, and a whole lot of sand. The water was initially cloudy, but as it began to clear, it revealed a hauntingly beautiful landscape. It was entirely lifeless, so I introduced Plankton, the bottom of the food chain. Over the first 10 days, I did nothing but let them multiply. Plankton may not look like much, but they are the foundation to all life on our planet. So they're kind of a big deal. On day 12, I introduced macroalgae. They are the equivalent to an underwater plant. They are covered in tiny snails and even the occasional starfish. Together, the plankton and algae will fuel the fire of life in the aquarium, starting with hermit crabs. Most of them explored the tank for pieces of debris and algae. Some of them were quite large, while this guy is smaller than the head of a penny. But this one had another idea. He was on the hunt for a new shell. Maybe this one will do. He had to inspect it for size, shape, and quality. And then he made the move. A perfect fit. He'll use this shell as a home for many months to come. By day 20, the snail population began to boom. They were taking over the rockwork, the glass, and even began climbing out of the aquarium. Many of them harassed the hermit crabs, and the glass was covered in eggs. I had to stop them. It was time to introduce a snail predator. Meet the pistol shrimp, an expert snail hunter. I added him into the tank, but there is a catch. He is completely blind, and the hermit crabs may try to eat him. He was outnumbered 10 to 1. He needed protection, and that is why he is not alone. These are goby fish. They have incredible eyesight and will protect him with their lives. In return, the shrimp will build them a home. But after adding them into the tank, they seem to have all vanished. But underground, they were building a fortress. They were safe. They were home. Meanwhile, above ground, the rock was looking barren and empty. It was time to introduce coral. They may just look like colorful rock, but with time, they begin to emerge. Coral serves as a refuge to life on the reef, and this jewel coral is no different. It is covered in holes that are home to a very special kind of worm. Christmas tree worms. They use colorful feathers to catch food passing by. But when they get scared, they disappear right back into the coral. I even added a few fish who will use the coral as a hunting ground and hideout. But in the evening, many of the coral began to close. The fish went into hiding, and night finally fell. The tank may look empty, so I got a dead anchovy. This fish has an irresistible smell that fills the aquarium. Zombie snails. They are attracted to the smell of blood. Pretty soon, the anchovy was completely surrounded. Even the hermit crabs joined in. All this commotion attracted something even bigger. A leopard snail. He is a snail-eating snail, and the top predator in these waters. But in this case, he was just after the anchovy. He uses a retractable mouth to puncture the fish's skin. After a few hours, it was like nothing ever happened. By day 40, life was in full swing. The pistol shrimp spent all day digging out their burrow, while the gobies stood guard. Meanwhile, the algae was growing rapidly. It was outgrowing the tank and taking over the rockwork. That is why I introduced a sea urchin. He will spend his whole life grazing on algae and keeping it at bay. But he was stopped in his tracks by a hermit crab. This hermit crab became a little too curious and went for a ride. Still, something in the aquarium was a little bit off. All of the coral began to close, and animals were taking shelter. They were doing so for good reason. I was about to simulate a hurricane. The storm left behind a dust cloud. The water column was filled with dirt and debris. But all of this debris was going to be food for sponges. They use hundreds of holes on their body to filter out the water. But this sponge is not like the rest. It began to move. That's because it is a sponge crab. He is in disguise. Unlike the sponges, he will not help filter the water. It was still cloudy and full of debris. That is why I added feather duster worms. They use these feathers on their head to filter and clean the water. But if they sense danger, they can vanish. By day 72, the reef had become a refuge for many forms of life. Every animal has its own role to play, and